Maria McManus was one of Clara Clemens's innumerable damp nurses, a profane devil, and given to whisky, tobacco, and also some other vices. From Clara's first birthday till some months had passed, her chances were uncertain. She could live on nothing but breast milk, and her mother could not furnish it. First we got Mary Lewis, the colored wife of John T. Lewis, the colored lessee of Quarry Farm, to supply it a couple of weeks, but the moment we tried to put her on prepared food, she turned blue around the mouth and began to gasp. We thought she would not live 15 minutes. When Mary Lewis's tank was exhausted, we next got Maggie O'Day from Elmira, who brought her child with her and divided up her rations. Not enough for the two, so we tried to eke out Clara's share with prepared food, and failed. She turned blue again, and came near perishing. We never tried prepared food any more. Next we got Lizzie Bothaker. When she went dry, we got Patrick's wife, Mary McAleer, and furnished the required milk. In turn, she went bankrupt. Then we got Maria McManus, and she stayed a year, until Clara was weaned. To me, but not to Mrs. Clemens, Maria was a delight, a darling, a never-failing interest. She smoked all over the house. In the kitchen she swore and used obscene language. She stole the beer from the cellar and got drunk on it and on strong liquors every now and then, and was a hard lot in every possible way. But Clara throve on her vices right along. In the shortest month in the year, she drank 258 pints of my beer without invitation, leaving only 42 for me. I think it was the driest month I ever spent since I first became a theoretical teetotaler. By certain arts and persuasions, I enabled Clara to believe that every time she acquired a damp nurse, she also acquired the nurse's name and added it to her own. I taught her to rattle off the list glibly, and as she was not able to pronounce any of the names correctly but butchered them all, I got great satisfaction out of hearing her do her little stunt. She did it gravely and with innocent confidence that it was all right, and just so. And so, whenever a stranger asked what her name was, she turned the whole battery loose on him, to wit, Clara Langdon Lewis O'Day Bothaker McLear McManus Clemens, and was not aware that she was playing any deception upon that stranger. Maria was proprietor of a baby who was boarded at a house on the Gillette Place, and by died. Mrs. Clemens gave her $20 out of sympathy and to enable her to make a worthy and satisfactory funeral. It had that effect. Maria arrived home about 11 o'clock that night, as full as an egg and as unsteady on end. But Clara was as empty as she was full, so after a steady pull of 20 minutes, her person was full to the ears of milk punch constructed of lager beer, cheap whiskey, rum, wretched brandy, flavored with chewing tobacco, cigar smoke, and profanity. And the pair were legally sprung and serenely happy. Clara never throve so robustly on any nurse's milk as she did on Maria's, for no other milk had so much substance to it. It always had lemon pie and green apples in it, and such other prohibited things as were believed by doctors to be fatal to children when administered to them through the breast of a nurse. But Clara always liked those things and prospered upon them. Maria was one of the most superb creatures to look at I have ever seen. She was 6 feet high and perfectly proportioned. She was erect, straight. She had the soldierly stride and bearing of a grenadier, and she was as finely brave as any grenadier that ever lived. She had a prodigal abundance of black hair. She was of a swarthy complexion, Egyptian in her tone. Her features were nobly and impressively Egyptian, and there was an oriental dash about her costume and its colors, and when she moved across the room with her stately stride, she was royal to look at. It was as if Cleopatra had come again. Out of idle curiosity, I once made a search of her room to see if there was anything interesting in it. Between her mattresses I found apples, pears, oranges, and the other fruit of the season, and enough of my cigars, smoking tobacco, and beer to start a shop with. Another would have reproached her, but I didn't. I only admired her provident care of herself, and I believed I would be just as thoughtful if I were a wet nurse myself. A couple of years after Clara was done with her in Hartford, she applied for a place as a wet nurse in an institution in New York, and gave me as a reference. The president wrote and asked me if this was correct. I said it was, and gave her reference enough to elect the 11,000 virgins of Cologne, if they had been in Maria's line of business. I said, give her all the beer and whiskey and brandy and tobacco and green fruit and apple pie she might want. Turn her loose on the nursery, and have no solicitude about the results.